come Eliezer gives to Rivka presents before anything starts, before he even talks to her or anything. He realizes that she's the one.
That's a very good question. I think we'll have something of an answer. Something of an answer. Okay, so we're learning the Baal Shem Tov and the Torah, right? And this is the first compilation that came out, or one of the first that came out of I think it's the first that came out of the Baal Shem Tov's teachings. And a compilation was needed because the Baal Shem Tov never wrote anything. He only taught his many students. And each one of them himself became a Rebbe, and they wrote books themselves. So a lot of the teachings were dispersed in different books. So by the time this anthology came along, there were third generation students already. So there was a lot of material that it collected, and he brought it together, and so we have a pretty good picture. He was actually Lubavitcher, but I don't remember his name. No, Avodas Yisrael is the Kuznitzer. The Kuznitz, Rebbe of Kuznitz, the Maggid of Kuznitz. This is where this is from. But this is also quoting Keter Shem Tov. Keter Shem Tov was a later compilation. Okay, so when Eliezer comes to find a kala for Yitzchak, so he ends up in Haran. And Haran is actually a well-known place. You know that it's in the southern part of central Turkey, and there's a village. It's not a village anymore. It's more like a small town called Haran, and it has two parts to it. There's if you see photographs from the 1950s, there was actually a big dig there. Not so big, relatively speaking. In the 1950s, that was carried out and gave some of the first excavations of the old site. So they drew a map of what everything looked like back then. It's not that long ago, maybe 70 years ago. But there's a central part of the city which is kind of round. It looks like an egg, and it's surrounded by a wall that exists to this day. And that was the ancient city. This city has been documented throughout history, meaning we know about it not just from the Tanakh, we know about it from everywhere. And very interestingly, it's one of the places that there was avodah zarah of worshiping the sun and the moon until well into the 11th century. There were temples there for the sun and the moon and human sacrifices. This is one of the places that Islam eventually ran over, but there was a strong Islamic presence there, and yet still they didn't do anything about it for a long time. They were, because as we know, Islam is very close to these types of idolatry, and it took them a long time to separate themselves from it. So Haran is very well known, and even at the very edge of the wall, a few hundred meters out, there's a well, the only ancient well that still works, which they call the Ber Yaakov. That's what they call it. And they say it's the actual well where Yaakov met Rachel, and that was the well where Eliezer saw Rivka. It's supposed to be the same well. Okay. In any case, so he comes to this place Haran, and he says later to Lavan and to Betuel, I came today to the well. Va'avo hayom el ha'ayin. Meaning, I set out from Beersheba, and I came today to the well. Okay. So Rashi says, today I left Haran. That's a mistake. Today I left Beersheba, and today I arrived. Okay. From here we learn that the way was shortened for him. The length of the trip was shortened. Rabbi Eliezer said, the common talk of the servants of the forefathers is better than the Torah of their descendants. Meaning the simple talk, the vulgar talk, the day-to-day speech, the things that they talked about are more important than the Torah that their descendants taught. So what's the idea here? That Eliezer is just a servant, as it were, and he's just telling, this is what happened to me. He's just relating what happened to him. And yet, this is more important than the Torah of Yaakov, of Avram's descendants, for some reason.
Just a minute. he was not Jewish, but he had a Brit Milah.
Okay, he was.
So how can you be? The fact that you had the Brit Milah doesn't mean that you're Jewish.
No.
It doesn't stick. It could be that there was some conversion back then. When Eliezer was converted, perhaps before, perhaps after, he got a Brit Milah because he was an Eved Avram. Hashem commanded him to circumcise all his servants.
Yes.
So that's why Eliezer was circumcised. By the way, which is the law anyway. I mean, when a person had a Canaanite servant, so to be able to stay with him after a year, he had to circumcise. And according to some opinions, after a year he had to decide whether to convert or not. And actually, just to become a servant, he had to circumcise. Meaning that after he was bought, they had to circumcise him immediately. He couldn't stay not circumcised. So in any case, this is a whole big topic. So, but the as we'll see, the type of conversion that Avram didn't stick. And the people that he converted, however he converted them, whether it was with circumcision, whether it was without, we don't know of anything that lasted. We don't know of any people that come and say we're descendants of Abraham's converts. Okay?
Yes.
Even though that would be a good trick. Luckily, well, now they know. But I won't say anything more. Okay, there's now what did they say yesterday? 50 million in Biafra who now claim that they're Jews.
Yes.
Yeah, this is going to happen more and more often as the world, God willing, is going through this transformation, that the Jewish people return to be the ones who deliver Hashem's sustenance into the world. Exile means literally that we are dependent even on our relationship with Hashem for the sustenance to come through the nations of the world. That's what exile means. And the end of exile is that is no longer the case. It's called the end of Shiabud Malchuyot. Shiabud Malchuyot really means it's not a political question, it's a spiritual question. And the question is, who does the sustenance, the spiritual sustenance of the world go through? So for a very, very long time, even our spiritual sustenance came from the nations of the world. We were dependent on them, even for our own things. For instance, we didn't invent the printing press. We didn't...
But that's not spiritual.
It's very spiritual. Printing press changed everything. But that's a small example of something. But more than that, it's just the fact that the food that we eat, and we'll get to this later on, the food that we eat was dependent on them, because they grew the food, they did most of the production, and maybe to this day it's like that, and the Jews were dependent on that. And now it's turning out that food production is dependent on something else. It's becoming dependent on drip irrigation. Anybody hear of that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, yeah. So it means that it's turning around. Even the physical begins to be dependent in different ways on things that are done here. People need to drink. Right. The desalination of water is one of the biggest industries in the world now, and most of it is developed here, because right now I think it's 70% or 80% of the water that we drink here is desalinated water. So it's a very big deal that this change is occurring. So as it occurs, more and more of the nations of the world come and say, so actually we want to be part of this. We want to be connected to this. And so they come out and they don't know how to say, will you accept us as A, B, C, or D? They think that the only option is, well, we have to claim that we're Jews. No, you don't have to claim that you're Jews. It's silly even. We're not stupid. I mean, give us a little bit more credit than that. I mean, the government's not so smart, but people are pretty smart. So really there's a different path, but it's not discussed enough. It's not explained enough what this other path for non-Jews is, and it could lead in the end to conversion, but that's a long way down the road. So really, you could say that the entire time of the Avos, the entire theme of how the patriarchs lived was Kefitzat Haderech, was that everything is done quickly. And we live by a very different theme. And our theme is slow and steady. Okay? Their theme is somehow you skip. You get from here to there in no time. It's a miraculous way. But the whole concept is that doesn't stick. Meaning that when you do things too quickly, even if it's miraculous, and you would think that something miraculous, it's a godsend. It must indicate that there's something very deep about this and very true about this, and how could this go wrong? Okay? These things don't stick in the end. So really what the Torah is doing something very, very interesting. What is it saying? What does it mean that the common talk of the servants of the patriarchs is greater, really the word, than the Torah of the descendants? What did Chazal mean? Literally what they mean is that Eliezer relates the whole story twice. One time when it happens, the Torah relates it to us, and then the second time when he repeats it to Lavan and to Betuel. And everybody's shocked. The Torah, when it comes to halacha, on one letter we can learn, on one tag on a letter we learn mountains, a whole mountain worth of halacha. And this thing repeats twice, and there's hardly any teaching there, as it were. But the Torah is sort of telling us aliyah v'kotzba, it's called. It's the best part of the animal, but it has a thorn in it.
What is it called?
Aliyah v'kotzba. That's the...
Going up on the floor?
No. Aliyah is the best part of the animal. It's the fattiest part of the animal that you're allowed to eat.
Aliyah?
So it's an aliyah, it's called, with an aleph. Aleph lamed yud hey. And kotzba, but it has a thorn inside. So when you taste it, it gets stuck in your mouth.
Where is it from?
It's one of the hind parts that you do eat. It's one of the, towards the side. Most of the okay, hold on, leave it alone. So getting more into this, Eliezer is doing something incredible. On the one hand, he skipped. He created a wrinkle in space, as we'll see, and he skipped from Beersheba to Haran in one day. And yet, when it comes to describe what he did, the Torah spends more than on any other topic, probably any other story, more words than any other story. So this is like the theme in reduced like into one essence of how the patriarchs were. That on the one hand they did everything very quickly, very essentially in an essential way. On the other hand, when we come to write Torah, we can do things very, very in a very short amount of words, a very small amount of words. So I want to get this paradox really in our heads. On the one hand, they're doing things very quickly, and it would seem to you that they're miraculous, and that therefore they should be eternal, and yet they're not. Nothing sticks from it. So they very quickly made converts. Maybe hundreds of thousands of converts. Who knows how many Avram had. They very quickly went through the whole land of Israel. It seems like he's the Baal Bait here. They very quickly do everything. Avram somehow knows the entire Torah all the way down to Dikdukei Sofrim, all the way down to the very intricate matters that Anshei Knesset HaGdolah brought about. Even that, even Eruv Tavshilin, even things like that, he was able to bring out of himself. So very, very quickly he's moving forward. And yet, nothing from it lasts. And the Torah almost, as a paradox, shows us this by saying, this really fast thing that he did, I'm now going to take 200, 300, 400 words to describe something that he did in one day. Why? And yet, on the other side of it is that we go through years and years of developing something, but in the end, it's written in the Torah. First of all, it sticks, and it's written in the Torah in a very short amount. We learn it from just one letter, 2 letters from the Torah. So there's an incredible paradox here that you can't say that something moving quickly and being miraculous is a sign for it being eternal. It's not at all. In fact, the opposite is true. If you want something that's eternal, you actually have to have some kind of duration, slow and steady. It's going to take time. But once you finish it, it will be eternal. Okay, so that's the basic paradox I think that's being brought up here. So now the Baal Shem Tov is going to tell us about this more. Let's see. So this very verse is the source of the divine name that causes Kefitzat Haderech. So from this verse itself, you learn, there's actually many verses that teach you Kefitzat Haderech. There's at least 3 or 4. And they're connected to different names. But this is one of the names. And this is the name that the Baal Shem Tov loved the most. And the Maggid of Koshnitz writes like this. So you get this name from this verse. This is the meaning of today I left. Again, it should be Beersheba, and today I arrived. From here, the way was shortened for him. From here, precisely, from these very words that he said. So what words did he say? What were his words? Va'avo hayom el ha'ayin. I came today to the well. So the initials of these 4 words, Vav, Hey, Va'avo hayom. I should have written this out in Hebrew, but El ha'ayin Aleph Hey. Vav Hey Aleph Hey. These are the words.
Is there another paper?
Oh.
Can I copy? Is there one nobody's written on so I can?
El ha'ayin.
El ha'ayin.
It's also Rabbi Acha and not Rabbi Eliezer, according to the
Yeah.
Rashi. You know the mistake.
Okay. It's not mine, so I accept all the mistakes for him. Anyway, so the initials of these 4 words, Va'avo hayom el ha'ayin, Vav Hey Aleph Hey, this is the holy name of Kefitzat Haderech.
In that order?
Oh, so that's the whole question. Okay. So, I see here that I don't have the section where this is written. He copied some of it and he didn't copy the rest of it. Okay, no. We'll say it by heart.
Say whose name, who you're mentioning.
Somebody was translating.
Cohen?
No, yeah, he's the guy who sends it out. But somebody did it for him. The person that did it for him is a good friend of mine, so he sent me the files. So there's all kinds of mistakes in it. Okay, in any case.
This is the holy name of Kefitzat Haderech.
Right. And again, Kefitzat Haderech means that the way is shortened. So the Maggid of Koshnitz asked like this. He said, so when you say Kefitzat Haderech, that the way was shortened, what do you mean? And really, literally means to jump, the jumping of the land. Likfotz. Likfotz means to jump, right? Not only. It also means something else. What does it also mean? What's a kfitz?
Spring.
A spring. What's the deal with the spring? Kfitz. Okay, that's a good. So really,
Not a spring of
Kfitz
water, spring up and
Kfitz
down.
is because it bends. Actually, the name for a knee in Hebrew, the original name in Tanakh is a kfitz.
Of what? A name of what?
The knee, Knee. The knee is called a kfitz.
And the spring is feet or feet?
Kfitz. It's the same word. The reason being that there's the verb likfotz means to curl. So to curl something. So when likfotz et yado means he closed his hand. He curled his fingers into his hand. That's likfotz et yad. So it means 2 things. It can mean likfotz, can mean to jump. Okay? It could also mean to curl and bend. So which happened here? Did Eliezer jump, meaning the land stayed the land the way it was, and he just jumped from here to there? There's a medrash that says, in Medrash Rabbah, in Parsha Mem Gimel, so they discuss how did Avram make it from Beersheba, or from where Sodom was, all the way to Damascus in one night. So the Medrash says, Psiotav shel Avraham Avinu shlosha milim. That every step that Avram Avinu takes is 3 miles long. How can you do that? Can you actually do that, by the way? You could, theoretically, and this is actually how it's described. How could you theoretically, without any magic, like do something like that? How could you take 3 mile long steps? Crutches, right, like stilts. But you have to be really good. So if you, and that's actually how it's explained. The Rizal explains this, that he doesn't say that this is what you do. He says that when a person does Kefitzat Haderech and he moves, he himself moves, not the land curls under him. So the feeling is one. He says if you've ever been on stilts, you'll understand what I'm talking about. It's like you can take these huge steps. That's the feeling. So when they say that his steps were 3 miles long, they don't mean to say that he took a 3 mile long step. He just says it means that you feel like you're on the moon. Like every step you take is like on these stilts. It's just a long, long, long step. If you ever walked on stilts, he says, the result, you'll understand what I mean. That's what it feels like. That's one way. That you're the one who's moving very quickly. But there's another. But that's what it sounds like. So it can mean both. So the other option is Kefitzat Haderech, that it's the derech, it's the aretz that is moving quickly, or not moving in this case, but curling. That's likfotz from the meaning of to curl. Who had the whole of Eretz Yisrael curled under him? Yaakov. And Yaakov also had a Kefitzat Haderech, right? He also came from Beersheba. He arrived in Haran, and when he was in Haran, he suddenly realized that he had passed by the Beis Hamikdash, where Yitzchak had been sacrificed, and he didn't stop to pray. So he went right back, and when he came back, that was sunset. So he did that in less than a day. So how could that be? So there also, Chazal say, that there were 3 people who had Kefitzat Haderech. Eliezer, Yaakov, they don't mention Avram. Avram is not Kefitzat Haderech, it's very interesting. And Avishai ben Tzruya, one of David's nephews. Okay? So the story with Yaakov demonstrates, at least that's what it seems like, and it is the same way here, that these 3, Eliezer, Yaakov, and Avishai ben Tzruya, they had Kefitzat Haderech not in the sense that they traveled quickly, but rather that the land curled underneath them, or wrinkled underneath them. So what we call today, that's what you would call a wormhole. And a wormhole, there's the idea of a wormhole is sort of like that space wrinkles, and then 2 places that were very, very far away now touch, and they curl. Now, and you create a tunnel through them. I don't want to get into this, but there's a whole new thing now in the last 4 years in quantum. It's sort of, I guess it's quantum mechanics, but it's a very interesting area that goes between quantum mechanics and relativity. And it argues that every single time that there's an interaction in the world, there's a wormhole created. And you have beautiful proof for it. It's really,
it's an interaction.
Yeah, every interaction between anything and anything creates a wormhole.
And what is the benefit of that wormhole?
The benefit is yet unknown, but if you would be able to use it, so you would be able to travel much faster than light. Because if you could transfer something through that wormhole, information for instance, then you could communicate faster than light. You can communicate from here to the furthest galaxy in no time.
Because it's instantaneous?
Because time is not a factor, because space has contracted, has wrinkled.
Right.
And not shrunk, but rather it touches somehow. Somehow it's touching. Okay. So the point though is that there are two possibilities. Either the subject is moving quickly, or objectively reality is shifted in some way so that two things that were distant now become close to one another. That's really the point behind it. Okay. So even from the Medrash, I know that Eliezer should be one of those where the space wrinkles. Okay. The thing that's missing here from the continuation of the Avodas Yisrael is that he asks this question, and he says, so which was it? Did Eliezer travel quickly, or did the ground wrinkle for him, or curl for him? Which one is it?
And why is that important?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh,
that
who
too.
cares? Wait. So we'll see. So he says, there's a simple way to know. Because this name that I just said, which is Vav Hey Aleph Hey, is really that's not how it's spelled. Right? Vavo Hayom El Ha'ain. Vav Hey Aleph Hey. Write it out if you need to see it.
Yeah.
On top is how it's in this verse. Vav Hey Aleph Hey. On top. Vavo Hayom El Ha'ain. But really the name is Aleph Hey Vav Hey. Where does this name come from? He says it comes from the first verse of the Torah. The first verse of the Torah says, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz. The earth and the heavens and the earth. And actually these initials appear in every single parsha in the Torah. It's a very common initial. Aleph Hey Vav Hey. You can find it many times. This is much more rare. Vav Hey Aleph Hey. This is not in every parsha. So, he says, what happened here? If, in the first verse of the Torah, Aleph Hey is the heavens, and the Vav Hey is the earth, right? Aleph Hey is Et HaShamayim, the heavens. Vav Hey is the earth. So what happened in Eliezer's name? The Vav Hey came before, the Vav Hey comes before the Aleph Hey.
The earth.
The earth precedes the heavens. So he says, from that I learn that it wasn't Eliezer who traveled quickly, but rather the earth moved. And the earth moved to be before the heavens. What does it mean that the earth moves to be before the heavens? That the earth has wrinkled, and therefore it wasn't that Eliezer traveled quickly, it's rather that objectively the distance became shorter. And that's why he was able to navigate that distance very quickly in one day. Okay, that's how the Kuznetzer teaches it. So all this is very nice, and we want to apply it somehow to ourselves. So, what is the heavens and the earth in a human being? Okay, it's a simple way of saying it. One way of saying it is that it's the soul and the body. The body would be the earth, and the soul would be the heavens. Any other options you can think of? Okay, so the godly soul would be the heavens, and the animal soul would be the earth.
The seichel in the middle.
Oh, that's another one. So the mind would be the heavens, and the heart, where the emotions are, that would be like the earth. And there's an incredible, well, not so incredible, but it's a very nice remez in Yiddish. How do you say heart in Yiddish? Hautz. So what's a hautz if you write it in Hebrew? Haaretz. Okay, that the heart is like the earth. It's just a remez, but it's true. Let's explain something. What is the biggest difference between the mind and between all of these separate, all these pairs of terms that are like the heavens and the earth. The biggest difference is that the one that's like heavens is instantaneous, and the one that's like earth is very slow. Okay, so let's take one example. The mind is very quick, but emotions, they're much slower. The attributes of the heart are much slower. How do I know this? So how do you call, you said it before, in general, how do we call the attributes of the heart? We call them midot. What does midot literally mean? Measurements. It's something that has size, meaning it takes time to get from here to there. You can't just hop. But the mind doesn't exactly have midot. It has something else. What does the mind have? So flashes of insight. Okay, Chokhmah is mamash, a flash, and then Binah is like the lightning rod that tries to capture it and tries to use it for something. But the mashal for the mind, and it's also it's exactly how we describe this today in medicine, is that the mind is working with electricity. Okay? And it's electricity in the end. Neurons, the whole neural system works by potential differences,
So does the heart.
which is the heart is only beating thanks to the mind giving it some kind of pulse, but the heart itself is mechanical. You actually have to move stuff around. In the brain, nothing moves around. There are blood vessels, but that's not what's thinking. What's thinking is the neurons, and in the neurons there's no movement. Really, what's happening is in the small, tiny, microscopic gap, called the synapse, between neurons, there's a slight change in the fluid, the pH of the fluid, the potential difference between one side and the other, which causes electricity to move. And the whole description is that it doesn't take time for the mind to want to move the hand. The hand moves instantaneously. On the other hand, when the heart wants to get going, it takes time. It's what we call warming up. And it takes time until it's pumping it just takes the time. It's not instantaneous. I think we once discussed this, that the early neural system in the body, before there was a neural system, was the hormones. So the hormones are secreted really by the brain, through all the glands, but they're much slower than the brain because they actually have to be secreted into the bloodstream, and then it takes them time to get to the rest of the body. How long? It can be anywhere between half a second for some hormones, which are very quick, and it could be a few minutes for others, depending on what they are. And there's some hormones that take even hours and days to, as everybody knows. Okay? The different ones act in different ways. So the big difference is one is mechanical and one is electrical.
It's like lightning and thunder.
Right,
and
right.
thunder.
So lightning here, right, it's like sight and sound. So the heart is more like sound, and it travels very slowly and takes time. And the mind is very quick. It works very fast. So what kinds of, how could we understand what a Kefitzat Haderech would be? So Kefitzat Haderech, if the earth is leaping, and that's what happened in the times of the forefathers, for Abraham, for Yaakov, for Eliezer. Avishai ben Tzruya, he's a little bit of a wild card there. So it has to be explained separately, because he's already in the time after Matan Torah. He's after the Torah was given. But for these three, it's the land that shrunk, that curled, that the heart somehow collapsed into itself. It made the process shorter. So how can that be? What does that mean really? It means that you can't really take shortcuts in the heart. It doesn't work. And what the patriarchs did, they did very quickly, but it was like the heart acting like the mind. And that doesn't work for the heart.
But for them it was alright.
That's all they could do, but it didn't stick. But they didn't have time. So sometimes you have to shorten the path that the heart has to travel. And the negative side of it is that it can work, but it won't last. You can't get it to last. To really make something last, you have to affect the heart in its natural way, which takes time. Now, there's an incredible dissonance here, if you're following me. If the mind is very quick and the heart is very slow, so how do you even connect them? They speak two different languages. One is light and one is sound. And so the heart needs time and space and all these things. And the mind is like lightning, it's very quick. And the moment you understand something, you're surprised that you don't act on it. Okay? But I know I understand it. Okay? Like yesterday my wife told me, it's not that I don't understand it. You need to help me actually do it. And doing it is very different than understanding it. So don't belittle me by telling me your problem is you don't understand it. I know what the truth is. The question is how do I get it to work? How do I get it to actually happen? But this is the dissonance is total, because there's mamish two different languages entirely. It's like how do you connect a horse to an electrical cord? You can't. Horses move slow. They're like mechanical, and the outlet in your house, that's electrical. You can't connect the horse to it. I want the horse, with the adapter to that. I don't want to feed it. I just want to put it into the into my outlet. So such thing. There's no adapter between a horse and an electrical outlet. It doesn't work that way.
You can compare. Is it like Kefitzat Mitzrayim and Har Sinai? One was fast, get out of Mitzrayim.
And so it says that Yetziat Mitzrayim was another Kefitzat Haderech, because in one day they traveled. The first day they traveled, the distance was like 7 days. So there, the Rizal explains that was them traveling faster. The earth didn't move; it's they that moved. And the reason we know this, because the image that the Nevi'im give for this is the Nevi'im. Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Va'isaytchem al konfei nesharim," that I took you on eagle's wings. What I mean by eagle's wings is that you traveled faster. The earth didn't contract for them. The earth didn't curl for them. It was rather that they were like the man on stilts. They moved very quickly because Hashem took them.
But one explanation, that they were taken to Yerushalayim to eat one Pesach. Yonatan ben Uziel.
Anytime you encounter something like that, what is the image to be associated with? When you try to understand what this image is saying, it's saying that this is a intellectual process going on. Intellectual processes occur quickly, and they occur by your own doing, because that's how they are. They are quick in their nature. So you can call it eagle's wings, you can call it on clouds. There's an explanation that it's like on clouds. All these things, they come to tell you, when you don't say that the land contracted, when you say that the person himself moved, you're saying, I'm talking about an intellectual process. And intellectual processes can be very quick. It's like a flash of lightning. How do we say it today? So the other way that we say it today is we say that on the first night of Pesach, on the eve of Passover, when we do the Seder, then all the lights come crashing down all at once, and then it takes us 49 days to put them in boxes. That's the same idea, because the lights coming down all at once is an intellectual eureka. It's like, wow, I understand something I didn't understand until now. But then the 49 days that come afterwards is putting it into the heart, and that takes a long time. That's a long process. And so anytime you encounter these types of images, you have to translate them. You have to translate them back into our world. Does it mean that Eliezer traveled or didn't travel quickly? I leave that to your imagination, because it's not the pshat of the Torah. It's a drush. Meaning nowhere in the Torah does it say Eliezer traveled from Beersheba to Haran in one day. Everybody should be aghast and amazed. It doesn't say that. It also doesn't say that Yaakov reached Haran and he came back in one day. It also doesn't say that. It's a drush. It's a drush that's based on learning the words.
What's drush?
Drush, it's a homily. Homily is like an interpretation. But it's not an interpretation that's based on the pshat of the words. The pshat of the word says, I came today to Haran. Today I just arrived. Here I am. Nobody knows me. And so on. And he wants to impress Lavan and Betuel with the fact that what a tzedekah your daughter is, your sister is. That Rivka is such a tzedekah because she doesn't know me. She doesn't know me from Adam. And yet she devoted herself to give me water, to give all my camels water, and so on. And nobody knows me here. Nobody knows who I am. She has no benefit from it. She can't even imagine who I might be. And she doesn't know that I'm Avram's shaliach. She doesn't know that I'm carrying, here's all, the wedding gift.
What about Sneut? She speaks like this to a stranger?
It's a little girl. Her chesed comes out. Okay. Why it's new?
She's below 13, right?
No, she's 3 years old.
Right.
How does a 3-year-old have
But they had to rush because Yitzchak has to get married. He's getting on in age, so...
So, in any case.
What about the Baal Shem Tov's travel?
Oh, also. Okay, send.
You gonna tell us?
Am I going to tell you? You have to ask him.
I have to ask her.
We all know that if you believe everything about the Baal Shem Tov, if you don't believe the stories of the Baal Shem Tov, all of them, you're an apikoros. And if you believe all of them, you're a fool. So where does that leave you? But you have to be careful with these things. You don't have to... but definitely the old images, you have to understand how they're thinking, how the sages are thinking, and what images they're giving. Because again, you have to understand when I speak Torah today. So suddenly I talk about the mind being more like electricity, the brain being more like electricity, and the heart being more like mechanical. Do I care? I'm not a surgeon. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not a cardiac surgeon. I'm not a doctor even. So what am I doing? I'm borrowing images that I hope that we can all connect to and to explain. The sages did the same thing in every generation. The prophets did the same thing in every generation. There's an idea here that you want to get across, and you have to find the right levush, the right garment, the right parable in order to explain it to people. But we, who come 3,000 years later, 2,000 years later, if we take them literally, it's a little bit of foolishness. On the other hand, you have to believe them completely because they're saying something that's true. It's just that you have to figure out what it is that they're saying. When there's pshat, there's pshat. I can't argue with pshat. If the Torah says that we received the Torah on Mount Sinai, that's pshat. That's not an image. It's a pshat. That's how it was. So they're in Mikayot Samidei Pshuto, but here these things are not pshat. They're learning. So we want to get out of them what the image is trying to give us. So here the image is trying to say that Eliezer moved very quickly, and in whose merit did he move so quickly? Where did Eliezer learn this? That the land contracted for him. In whose merit did the land contract for him? Because of Avram. And Avram already had this happen to him once, and he took Eliezer with him. We know that Eliezer was his main soldier when he went to fight the 4 kings. So Eliezer knows all about these things.
What did that matter, though?
So
It went faster.
Right. So that's what the Torah is telling us a little, because it's saying, look, even though these things, they occurred very quickly, and there was almost no, the patriarchs lived between them something like 200 years, like the whole span of time that they were alive. And in 200 years, they achieved what has been taking us 3,000 or 3,500 years since. Nonetheless, as many words as I'll devote to it in the Torah, it still didn't stick. It still did not change reality. and don't go for contracting the heart. Don't go for contracting the earth, for curling the earth, because when you shorten those processes, in the end, they don't have the effect you wanted them to have. They, in the end, turn out to be a quick solution, but it doesn't last. And you want things to have a much longer effect, and you want them to actually change reality. So now we're still at the question. The question was, there's dissonance between how the mind acts and how the heart acts. They speak two different languages. The amazing thing is that there's no easy way to solve this. So let's look at this. When the Rebbe Rashab went to see Freud, so he came. We've talked about this in the past. So he came because of his I keep forgetting how to say it, paralysis in his left hand. The fifth Rebbe of Chabad.
His birthday is today.
Whose birthday is today, which is why we're mentioning him. Zchuto again later. He came because of his paralysis. He had a paralysis in his left hand. And he also suffered from depression. You should know. He had some kind of depression, whether it was deep or not deep or whatever. There was no drugs back then. So he dealt with it. Like we know that most probably Reb Nachman had very deep depression, and he dealt with it.
How do we know that he had depression?
Because he describes it in his writings. He Mamish describes it. I mean, you can't. I don't know if today somebody describes things to you and you say it's depression. There's no depression meter. We can't do a blood test. We don't know really. This is not a quantitative diagnosis. But on the other hand, it sounds a lot like what people describe today, and we call it depression, what he's describing. And yet, as much as he had apparently episodes of depression, he never stopped working. He never stopped. He took walks. He did most of the stuff that people do today. It's very interesting. But he got on with his life. To tell you it was debilitating, I don't know what level it was. But what he describes in his writings, his journal, and he kept the journal not as strong as detailed a journal as his son, the Rayatz, but he kept a journal, and you can read it. It's published, and it sounds like he has at least depressive episodes. So. Well, this specific meeting was in 1903. With Freud. He was, if I'm not mistaken, 47.
And he...
Wait, no, he passed in 1920, and he was 60 when he passed away. So he was 43.
And he always had paralysis, or this was something?
The paralysis was old, from his childhood, if I'm not mistaken. The paralysis was a real problem that he had. That everybody knew about, that he had, his left hand wouldn't function sometimes.
So he put his tefillin on the Mishnah.
Left hand? You put tefillin on with your right hand.
Paralysis sometimes.
Okay, it came and went. But it was never well. Like his hand was never fully well. It went up and down. Like everything neurological, because it's a neurological issue, so it's connected in some way to a person's psychological state.
I'd love to hear what he said about depression.
Anyway, he didn't say anything about depression. He didn't call it depression. But he says, I feel that I'm not doing anything. Nothing's worth it. I'm not succeeding. Not this, not that. But he went on. He didn't stop, and he didn't say, because he knew I have a mitzvah. So even if I feel that I'm not making headway, I'm not whatever. So that's my issue. And it's very Kabbalah's Olnik. He receives the yoke of heaven and does what he needs to do. Really, that's the only solution in the end.
So this is
for everything.
This is a little off topic, but he writes so much about the ladder of prayer, and I wonder if he felt that he got out of his depression when he, during his dying,
Probably.
he says that.
That too, and usually again the prescription back then was walks. Was to take walks in the country. That was the main thing. In any case, so he met Freud, and he came because of his paralysis. Freud was a neurologist. And one of the questions that Freud dwelt on, that the Rebbe Rayatz was in the interview, and he later recounted it. And said one of the questions that Freud asked the Rebbe Rashab was, what is Chassidus? So he told him, this thing that you're a sage of. So what's your job? So he says, my job, what I do is, the purpose of Chassidus is to build a bridge between the mind and the heart. That's how he phrased it. So in the end, that's what it means. So Freud right away got angry. Not angry in the sense of, but right away. So he says that's impossible. There's nothing that can bridge the mind and the heart because they are two separate worlds. You can't connect them. So the Rebbe Rashab gave him a mashal. Very interesting. He said, in principle, you're right. They are two different worlds, but you can connect them the same way that there is now a telegraph. That's the mashal that he gave him. That you can create a channel of communication that will span the gap between them. And that channel of communication, at first it seems to you, right, there's one thing here and one thing there. There's 100 kilometers in between. How are you going to get a message across? Well, you have to walk. And 100 kilometers is going to take a day and a half. That's how it is. So every message is going to take a day and a half. So that's a long way to communicate. But Chassidus is a shortcut. Chassidus is building a telegraph between the two. And it's not a shortcut in the sense, and here's the question. Is it a shortcut in the sense of bringing them together, wrinkling space, curling space up? Or is it about that the person moves quickly? That somehow the messages from the mind will span the gap very quickly because you have a very powerful mind. So you got this ability to jump and just jump into the heart. So which is it?
What about this moving quickly because it's in wires?
Okay.
What about
Now you could say something. It's through the clouds and whatever, that it's wrinkling the time, the space.
I would say it's both. Combination.
Okay.
like
Right, it's
See,
like the
you've been
waves
learning
and
with me for too
particles.
long.
What is quickly and it's parallel.
There's both. Really, there's
Right.
both.
It's what?
It's really both. Why is it both? Because it depends which day of the week it is. On weekdays, what is it on weekdays? What do you do on weekdays?
Busy
Run.
with Gashmiut.
So
It's running.
You go, you move.
weekdays is the measures of the heart, right? And the measures of the heart, they take time. So you build the telegraph by curling space, as it were. And you can't really curl it, so it doesn't really work that way. So what do you do? So you can't really curl space. So on weekdays, what can you do though that you're not allowed to do? So you do melachot. These melachot, what they do is these actions that we do during the day are called avodat birurim, the work of clarification. And what they try to do is they build, if not a telegraph or something, they build the telegraph physically. When you build the telegraph, you can't say that we're only going to need 2 kilometers worth of wire. No, if there's 100 kilometers between them, you're going to need 100 kilometers. But the big trick is that once you've built it, once you've done the work, it's there. Okay. So it's a long, short path. On the one hand, it takes a long time. You actually have to go, and actually you go back and forth a lot of times between the two parts. And you go back and forth, and you do, and you do, and you do, until something is built. But once it's built, you've got a shortcut. Okay? You've created this curl in space. What do you call that curl in space? Shabbos. Meaning, you do a lot of work during the week, and the work that you do during the week is that you can't really you can't shorten the distance between two things. What you do is you work very hard, and you build and you construct and you build this telegraph until it works. And when it works and you turn it on, wow. So now you've got a path between the two. This is called the longer, shorter path. Because you start out with a lot of work, but once you're done, it's a short path. It goes quickly. What's the other option? The other option is really, what if I was really able to use only a kilometer worth or a meter's worth of cable, and the earth underneath would actually curl? Okay? What if it would actually curl? And if it would actually curl up, so then I wouldn't need to do all this. It would just be very quickly. I wouldn't have to spend, and in fact, I wouldn't have to work. I wouldn't have to do anything, any kind of labor to create the connection between the mind and the heart. That's called Shabbos. And that's called the shorter, longer path. Why is it short? Because it's instantaneous. You don't do any work for it. It's longer because it only works on Shabbos. Meaning, if you try to use it in the middle of the week, it doesn't work. It won't work.
And what is it that works on Shabbos? What is it?
Oh, so how does this? So Shabbos is an incredible thing that Hashem brings. It's called Aliyat Olamot, the elevation of the worlds, which is real, and it's called Dafka, the worlds, not the souls. The worlds are like contracting. They're all moving up. So, but they're not moving up, just moving up. They're actually like curling up into themselves. And so it becomes a much shorter path to get to where you want it. That's the Chiddush of Shabbos, that everything is elevated, and therefore, when you want to communicate, it's right there, it's in front of you. So in Shabbos, it's a short path. There's no distance.
Communicate with Hashem.
Communicate between the mind and the heart. That's the toil of Shabbos. But when you want to talk about the weekdays, that's called the longer, shorter path. So in a certain sense, you're building both. On the one hand, you're doing the hard work, which is that to connect the heart and the mind, you have to get the heart to speak in the language of the mind. What is a telegraph? What's the mashal here? The mashal is that I'm taking physical matter and I'm going to use it to transfer messages the way the mind transfers messages, because telegraphs work on electricity. They don't, it's not the Pony Express. And if it was a horse, so that would be like just the heart. And horses are all heart, and they're pumping their blood, and so at best, 100 kilometers, we can do it in 4 hours. Great. It's beautiful. But I want it to be instantaneous. You can get to that, but you need a lot of work to set up this telegraph system. And eventually, when it's set up, then you can use it anytime you want. So you've gotten the heart to speak the mind's language, but it takes a long time. That's what Chabad is about. Chabad is really about this hard work that says that I'm going to bring you to a state where the Shamayim come down into the earth. Meaning, the way that the mind communicates, that's going to be how the heart communicates. But to get there, it requires a lot of preparation. But you can get there. So he says, I can bridge the gap. How can I bridge the gap? I'm going to teach my heart to speak the language of my mind. That's what you do when you learn Chassidus Chabad. What is the other option? Shabbos. Shabbos is something else. This whole thing you call the heart, it contracts itself. The hearts, the land itself, haaretz, contracts. And suddenly, it's already not far from the mind, even though it's speaking its own language, but it's like connected right away to the mind. You didn't set anything up. The only problem is that this doesn't last. You can do it one day of the week, but you can't do it the rest of the week. The rest of the week, you have to work hard to build your telegraph. And truthfully, every time you want to connect another city and another city, so there's always more work on this telegraph system. You're always connecting more and more things, so there's always more learning. What does that mean? It means that there's always Shabbos in the psyche. There's a Shabbos in the psyche. There's times that you're suddenly elevated. There's times that the bottom goes up. That's the curling of the earth. That's what Eliezer and Abraham and Yaakov, they all experienced. They experienced somehow that the heart curled into the mind. And so everything was very instantaneous, very quick. The problem was that the moment that stopped, so you're left with this huge gap, 100 kilometers, and nothing to bridge it. So that took a long time to build. But on Shabbos, you get to enjoy the reality like the patriarchs, like the Avos. So what do we say on Shabbos? Avraham Yagel, Yitzchak Yeranen, Yaakov Uvanav Yenuchu Bo. It's Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. The three prayers are related to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. So everything that's happening is like we're connected to the world of the Avos. And there, the relationship is instantaneous without any work. How is it described in Chassidus? That when you're with a tzaddik, you don't have to work hard. You don't have to work hard. It's very easy. Because the tzaddik gives you that curling of the heart into the mind. And so it's instantaneous, like Shabbos. That's why every tzaddik, what's he called? Talmud Chacham in the Gemara is called Shabbos. That's his name. Right? In the Gemara, they used to call each other by the name of Shabbos. Hey, Shabbos, come here. His name is Shabbos. His name is Shabbos. His name is Eliezer. Pseudo. But he's B'chinat Shabbat. He's like Shabbos. That's what he's like. Because everything by him is instantaneous. So either you're with a tzaddik and you feel that, or in Shabbos you can feel that. You can get that from Shabbos. What does it mean? The heart curls, it elevates into the mind. And then, when it's like that, you don't need to go through processes. There's no process. Shabbos comes in, there's no process of Shabbos coming in. You don't do, okay, slowly. It's not a countdown. Okay, now we don't light lights. Now we don't drive half an hour later, half an hour. No. Shabbos starts. Mikdash Shabbat Kaima. Here it is. It's right in front. It's just instantaneous. And from this moment on, forget it until the end. You're in a different world. But weekdays are not like that. They're all processes, long processes drawn out and so on. And every weekday you work on a different part of the telegraph. You work on connecting other things, and they take time. So another way to describe this, and with this will end because we need to end. The Rebbe had a very beautiful statement that he said that in our generation, komos macht eichus, that quantity makes quality. Another way to think about this is, what is quality? Let's think about this word, quality. There's a guy, and his name is Robert Pirsig, who built a whole philosophy of quality. It's in his book. He has a few books. The one that everybody knows is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Okay? So that was about his philosophy of quality. Let's think about quality. What does quality mean? Quality means that, let's say you have a painter, and he's been painting for 40 or 50 years. You have a person who's a woodworker. You have a person who gives classes. You have a person who does this, who does that. The quality is what you get after many repetitions of the same thing, done over and over and over again. Okay? Quality, in our understanding today, is like the famous saying that talent, okay, when you say talent, that's like quality. But talent really is 99% practice and 1% innate. Okay. So what are you saying? You're saying that really to get quality today, it's not that there are no examples of quality without repetition, without quantity, but most quality that we know about today is a result of a lot of quantity of practice. Many times that the person's done it and done it and done it and done it until eventually they get really good at it. And then the quality comes out. So the question is, can you do something that's quality without many repetitions? So the answer is, on Shabbos you can. But the rest of the week it doesn't work that way. In the rest of the week, if you want, meaning, if I just want to daven at a high level, Shabbos will give me this rush. It'll give me this special thing that I can't get the rest of the week. But the rest of the week, you want to daven well? I'll meet you in 5,000 days. Let's see what happens after 5,000 days. Then we'll talk about what it is. Another way of seeing this, I just want to show you this because I saw this on Shabbos. It was very interesting. So on the top, I drew a sine curve. Let's call it a sine. So it's continuous. So you see what it looks like. On the bottom, I sort of quickly drew it, not with a line, but rather with points. It's the same shape, but how many points are you going to need until you realize that what I'm drawing has this shape? Sort of like connect the dots. You're going to need a lot of points. And the more refined, the more exquisite, the more complex the shape is, the more points you're going to need. There's actually a mathematical way to figure out how many points you're going to need. It's called the Nyquist theorem. It's not important. I just threw that in to somebody who knows what the Nyquist theorem is, and they're going to say, Torah is so deep. Anyway, so, but there's a way to calculate it. When, during the weekdays, it's like we're drawing points, another point, another point, another point, another point. You don't get the quality until you see the finished image, and then you can only see it after many, many, many points. So the fact that part of the points are down here, there's davenings that look like, I don't want to talk about it. There's davenings that really points that are up here, but all of them together will draw out what davening is. So quantity makes quality means that it's also the failures and all the things that you think that are just, I'd rather not have had this day. It doesn't mean anything. No, that's how it works when the midos, when the heart has its full size. And that's what happens on the weekdays, because the weekdays are the midos of the heart. They're the attributes of the heart. But on Shabbos, everything is contracted. It goes up, and suddenly you're in the mind. In the mind, everything moves very quickly. But the chisaron is that nothing sticks, right? Because you can't do any melacha on Shabbos. You can't change the world at all. All you do is you think. All you do is you work in the mindset. And in the mindscape, you built all kinds of ideas, but really they don't really affect reality. In fact, it's so strong that you shouldn't even plan what actual acts I'm going to do. On the other hand, you're allowed to think. Okay? And the more you think, the merrier, okay? The better. But weekdays, you're drawing points. And it could be, and again, it's like a telegraph. Think about the line. This line that we put in the end of the telegraph, really, what is it made out of? One pole, another pole, another pole, another pole, another pole, another pole. And make it, enough poles, and you'll be able to connect two distant points with a line. And suddenly you'll realize that there's a way to connect these two things. So what the daily, call it the daily work, the weekdays of Melacha, they're there to put the points in place until eventually you've constructed a relationship between the mind and the heart, between what you know is true and how you act, between where you want to go and actually going there. And all these things, they just take time. And some of them are low points, and some of them are high points, but they are all needed in order, in the end, to trace the quality, to create this thing called quality, to create this thing that you're looking to achieve. So what Eliezer did was unfair. Again, it jumps quickly. It comes to Torah and says, look, really, to describe what he did, it's quality. I need all these words. And in the end, it didn't affect anything in reality. It didn't change anything. The land remained, went back to being how it was. If it was curled up, it opened up again. And Eliezer even, does anybody know a descendant of Eliezer? Never heard of one. Even he didn't stick. Can for that it worked, but he didn't. Okay, yeah, sorry.
So just sometimes there's do they said they do connect, like sometimes you could be at a certain place and you feel out, or emotionally something has happened, or you're trying to save your grandfather's life, and suddenly that's the two coming together.
The telegraph
or
turned
sometimes
on.
it's a good place.
The telegraph turned on, meaning you've worked hard enough,
Yeah, so then
so you have a connection. I was going to say, there's a beautiful gematria. It's almost a crazy gematria, but it's true. Mechonat, usually people talk about time machines. Really what we've talked about today is space machines. How would you say a space machine in Hebrew? Mechonat makom. There's a mechonat zman, which is a time machine. So a space machine would be a mechonat makom. Mechonat makom equals Shabbos. That really what Shabbos does is it contracts space, meaning contracts the heart into the mind, and then what you attain during those 24 hours is really super. But again, it's going to take time afterwards when the weekdays start to actually build that thing that you attain. But when it's on Shabbos, it's like the level of the elbows. You're doing a tremendous amount of things. V'avo hayom el ha'ayin, today.
that's really Malchut going into Binah.
That's what it means. That's what it means. That's exactly what it is. Right, right. And that's actually what we talked about last week. That we said that the Oreach brings the Ol Bina.
Right.
That it's a sort of like a continuation here. That the guest, he's the one who brings into your house that light of Bina, that mindfulness that you need in order to take Shabbos, which is just Malchus usually, it's just on the bottom, and suddenly elevate it up to the mind, and then things happen very quickly. Again, they need the rest of the week to flesh out, and you got to build a telegraph again, and so on. Okay.
What about my question? That Eliezer gives
How do I stop
Wait,
this?
wait.
Wait, I just want to stop this.
Esther wants something answered on here.
Okay, but I want to stop it.
You want to stop it? She's gonna
How
be
do I
mad
stop it?
for not,
How do you stop this thing?
whether you can stop during
Oh,
Shemona
here it is.
Esrei if somebody